The ACC manages 2 wins against the SEC this week, but they were both against top-5 teams after Duke took down Auburn on Wednesday.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Andy Patton. You're joining at the place to get your college basketball content Monday through Friday, 52 weeks out of the year, whether it's the off season, feast week, March Madness, whenever. We are here for you. Want to give a special shout out to our everyday listeners and those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord channel. And remind you all that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and if you win, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com now to get started. But we got a jam-packed episode recapping an epic day of college basketball on Wednesday. We're breaking down the 6 ACC-SEC games that we saw, including, of course, Duke taking down Auburn, Bama taking down North Carolina, Pitt getting obliterated by Mississippi State. We're going to talk about that. We also got the 4 Big 12 Big East games, which included the number 1 team in the country, the Kansas Jayhawks, going down to a surprisingly unranked Creighton team. We're going to talk about that game, UConn's win over Baylor. And then we're also going to talk about the 3 Big 10 regular season matchups that got underway on Wednesday, including Ohio State getting stuffed by Maryland. And then we'll close out the show with a preview of 3 games going on Thursday. Like I said, a lot to get to today. We'll start with the SEC-ACC Challenge, where ultimately the SEC won 14 out of 16 games against the ACC. It was a domination from the conference. We kind of knew it was going to be like this. FanDuel was favoring the SEC in 9 of the 10 games on the first day of the season, or on the first day of the challenge. And then going into Wednesday, I think FanDuel had them favored, I think 4 or 5 of the games as well. Ultimately ends up being 14-2 in favor of the SEC. But the 2 SEC teams that lost were both ranked in the top 5 at the time of the loss. We had Clemson taking down Kentucky, that game happened on Tuesday. Talked about it on Wednesday's episode. And then we had Auburn getting taken down on the road in Cameron by Duke. We'll talk about that game in a second, but we'll start going through them in the order of which the games happened. Bama takes down North Carolina on the road. Nate Oats' team scores 94 points against Carolina, beats them 94-79. Mark Sears finally looked like Mark Sears. There have been some discussion about some senioritis for a lot of the fifth-year guys. Mark Sears wasn't playing like himself. Caleb Love wasn't playing like himself. John L. Davis at Arkansas didn't look quite like himself. Mark Sears finally gets back into that column. 20-point game for him, 7 assists and a pair of steals. He was 7 of 14 from the field. He was only 2 of 7 from 3, but got it done at the free throw line, got it done driving to the basket, distributed the ball well, just looked much more like himself, the player that we hadn't seen much of yet this year for the Crimson Tide. Bama shot 36.5% from 3, 12 of 33. Aiden Holloway coming off the bench, knocked down 5 on 9 attempts. Jaren Stevenson, who struggled really to shoot the ball early in the season, 2 of 3 in this game. And then Houston Millett. Shout out Houston Millett. I talked about this a little bit on a show, I think, last week for Alabama, when we knew Chris Youngblood was out for the year. They had some other guys struggling, and they were redshirting Houston Millett, who transferred to Alabama this offseason from Pepperdine, where he was a 2-year starter, a 44% three-point shooter. And I thought, man, this team could really use him. But when Latrell Wrightsell goes down with the season-ending injury, it seems like Nate Oats in Alabama has obviously pulled Millett off the red shirt, which is what his plan was for this year. Millett goes 2 of 2 from 3 in this game. He's going to be a big part for this Alabama team going forward. Carolina out-rebounded Alabama. We were concerned about the physicality in the front court, and yet that wasn't really the issue for Carolina. Their bigs still didn't play great, and they still have some issues in that area, but team shot 5 of 28 from 3 at home to shoot 5 of 28 from 3. Just not going to get it done. RJ Davis was 1 of 11. We talked about that senioritis. We said, oh, Mark Sears looks like he's coming back. Well, RJ Davis still hasn't quite been there. He's had his moments, but he was not good in this game. 1 of 11 from 3. Seth Trimble was 1 of 4. Elliot Cadeau was 0 of 2. Jalen Washington, 0 of 3. Team did not shoot it well. In fact, Ian Jackson was 3 of 5 from 3 in this game. The rest of the team was 2 of 23 really, really rough shooting game from the North Carolina Tar Heels. This is a team that is really reliant on those three guards, Cadeau, Trimble, and of course, RJ Davis. And when they don't shoot it well, they don't have enough firepower in the front court to get it done. And that's what we saw in this game, not doing enough to hang with Alabama, taking another loss, this one at home, to the Crimson Tide. Florida picks up a win, beats Virginia by 18, 87-69 at home. They only had 4 at halftime, but they blew them away in the second half. Virginia just does not have the talent to hang with a team like Florida. Really nice game from Walter Clayton Jr., 27 points for him, as well as 4 assists and 3 boards. He was 10 of 19 from the field. Alex Condon has been a fantastic player in the front court for the Gators. 19 points, 8 rebounds. He was 7 of 8 from the field. He is a very, very high efficiency, productive big who can do a little bit of everything. He's been really good, and he's going to be a problem for teams in the SEC this year. Virginia shot it well from 3. They were 8 of 21. That's 38% from beyond the arc, but they had 15 turnovers, and Florida only had 6. Virginia team that prides itself on strong defense, slowing the game down, forcing turnovers. If Florida's only turned the ball over 6 times and you're turning it over 15 times, you're not going to win. Doesn't matter how well you shoot it from 3. Last note on Virginia, TJ Power, transfer from Duke. He's been a non-factor this season. He barely even played in this game. He didn't record any stats. No field goal attempts, no rebounds, no steals, no assists, no points, nothing. Virginia needs more. They got great performance from other transfers. Elijah Saunders, transfer from San Diego State. He was great, led the team with 19 points, but TJ Power was expected to be a big part of this team, and he has not been that player or anywhere close to it for the Hoos up to this point this season. Big one here, Duke hangs on to knock off Auburn, the second-ranked Tigers, 84-78, previously undefeated before losing to Duke here. Duke was at home. Cooper Flagg, 22 points, 11 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. That's the kind of Cooper Flagg game that we're looking for. He still hasn't been very efficient. He was 7 of 18 from the field in this one. He also missed all 4 of his three-point attempts, but he was 8 of 12 from the free throw line and ultimately 22 and 8 while contributing multiple steals, multiple blocks, and 4 assists. Just a really well-rounded game from Cooper Flagg, especially against a very good Auburn team. The other star was one of the more kind of forgotten freshmen in this class for Duke. You hear a lot of conversation, obviously, about Cooper Flagg. There's been a lot of conversation about Con Knipple and Kaman Malawak in the front court, but Isaiah Evans, the other big freshman in this class, he had a phenomenal game, 18 points in 16 minutes. In 16 minutes, he took 8 3-point attempts. Folks, he knocked down 6 of them. That's your 18 points right there. 6 made threes in 16 minutes for Isaiah Evans. Really good game for him to do that on a national stage, to do that in a major game with a ton of people watching. That's going to help his draft stock and help remind people that there's more than just the big 3 freshmen in this class for Duke. Duke only had 4 turnovers in the game for a young team, a freshman-laden team against a good defensive team in Auburn. 4 turnovers, that is incredible. Shout out Janai Broom, had a great game for Auburn, 20 points, 12 boards, 3 assists. For the Tigers, though, 2 of their starters didn't even score. Dylan Cardwell and Denver Jones did not get into the scoring column at all. Chad Baker-Mazara, had 17. Todd Pettiford continues to be one of the more prolific freshmen in the country, especially freshmen coming off the bench. He had 20 in this one for Auburn. Not a devastating loss for Auburn. I know it felt like it in the moment. But, with a big picture look, a 6-point loss on the road to a very good Duke team, that's not going to hurt you too much for Auburn. Hopefully they got some lessons out of it. But I know there was some unhappiness with the imbalance of the officiating and things of that nature. But a great game, a great way for the ACC to not get completely shut out on either day. They got 1 win on both Tuesday and Wednesday of the ACC-SEC Challenge. Duke picks up a real big one for their resume as well. Probably the most devastating loss for the ACC would be Pitt, kind of fighting for that second, third place spot in the ACC right now, fighting with North Carolina to be considered number 2 behind Duke. And they got walloped. Obviously, North Carolina also lost, but North Carolina played a better team in Alabama. Mississippi State, a good team, don't get me wrong, and they're going to be ranked next week, but they crushed Pitt. 90-57 was the final score here, a 23-point margin of victory for Chris Jans and the Bulldogs. Again, probably or arguably at least the worst loss for the ACC, just in terms of margin of victory and, expected placement in the league for a team in Mississippi State who's not considered a top 5 or maybe not even a top 8 team in the SEC. And that's not even a knock on them. It's just an acknowledgement of how deep the SEC is. to obliterate a team competing to be second or third in that conference. Not a good look for the Atlantic Coast Conference. Jalen Lowe had 19 for the Panthers. None of their other starters had more than 6. He was 7 of 21 from the field and 4 of 9 from 3. The rest of the team was 13 of 43 and just 4 of 17 from 3. Meanwhile, the battle on the glass was won handily by the Cowboys, 49-27 for the Cowbells, for Mississippi State. 22 rebound advantage for Mississippi State. Keyshawn Murphy had 20 and 7 boards off the bench. Michael Nwoko had 18 and 11 in the starting lineup for Chris Jans' team, who is now 7-1. Their only loss is to Butler. They are now up at number 12 at KenPom. Like I said, this is a team that should unquestionably be ranked when the rankings roll around on Monday. They've looked very good so far this season. Last 2 games here, not as surprising of results. Texas beats NC State. That was a road win for the Longhorns over the Wolfpack, 63-59. The Longhorns shot 47% from 3. Both teams were terrible from the free throw line. Trey Johnson, the star freshman for Rodney Terry's team, 18 points, 4 of 6 from 3. And as we've been kind of getting into this season, the bench for the Longhorns, 9 points in total. All of them came from Kendall Weaver. Nobody else in that Texas bench had any points. Still an area of concern for that team. Dontrez Styles had 17 for NC State off the bench on 7 of 12 shooting. And then Vanderbilt wins at Virginia Tech, 80-64. Not a surprise here. Vandy was the heavy favorites. Virginia Tech looks like quite possibly the worst power conference team in the country. Vandy is under a nice resurgence under Mark Byington, the coach who comes over from James Madison. Interestingly, despite winning this game by 16 points and scoring 80, Vanderbilt did not have a single starter in double figures. They did have 2 guys come off the bench, Jason Edwards, who had 19, and MJ Collins, who had 15. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech turned the ball over 15 times and shot 38% from the floor. It's not going to get it done. In no reality does a 15 turnover game where you shoot less than 39% get you a W. That is the case here for Virginia Tech. Shout out Duke transfer Jaden Shutt, 15 and 4 for him, 5 of 11 from 3. But he is not enough to carry this team to any semblance of success this year. And we'll see how they do in the ACC, but it's probably not going to be great. Folks, we move on to talk about the Big 12 Big East battle. The top-ranked team in both conferences lost on Wednesday, including Creighton knocking off the number 1 team in the country, the Jayhawks in Omaha. We're going to talk about that game and the others coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, get ready to tackle the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, if you win, you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. We'll get to this to close out the show, but Penn State, 1.5-point favorites at home against Purdue in their Big Ten opener. I believe in Matt Painter's team. I don't think they're going to go on the road and lose to Penn State, even though I think there's some solid promise with this Nittany Lions team, but if you're a Matt Painter believer, if you don't think that's a loss for them, head to FanDuel. 1.5-point favorites for Penn State right now. There's that. There's plenty of other odds on there for individual games as well. And just visit FanDuel.com and you can join today. And as a reminder, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast. We're still recapping all of the epicness from Wednesday. We talked about the 6 games to finish out the ACC-SEC Challenge. Now I want to talk about the 4 games we saw in the Big 12 Big East Challenge on Wednesday. As a reminder, the Big East got off to a 2-0 start in this event, or in this, we'll call it an event. On Tuesday's games, the Big East went 2-0 with Villanova picking up a win over Cincinnati and Providence picking up a win over BYU. Those are some unexpected results in favor of the Big East, who has not looked very good this year. And then we saw a split between these leagues on Wednesday. UConn and Creighton both pick up W's. That's not exactly surprising in the sense of being the 2 best teams in the conference traditionally, but UConn was playing a really good Baylor team. We'll talk about that game. Creighton, of course, took down the number 1 team in the country in Kansas, while Marquette takes a loss. Previously undefeated Marquette loses to Iowa State. And then DePaul, not as big of a shock, although DePaul was also previously undefeated. They take a loss to Texas Tech to make it a 4-2 advantage currently for the Big East with a few more games to go. So with the UConn-Baylor game, UConn beats Baylor 76-72. It's a little hard to know exactly what this game result means just because UConn was playing without Alex Karaban, their star player. He was not in the lineup for them. Baylor was playing without VJ Edgecombe, their star freshman. So two key players for both teams out. And then also Jeremy Roach, unfortunately, exits the game with like 15 and a half minutes to go. So he only played the first half and he exited with concussion protocol. As I'm recording right now, we haven't heard an update on him. Hopefully it's nothing super serious and he can get back into the action for Baylor soon. But for the Bears to be playing down VJ Edgecombe, down Jeremy Roach for a half, for UConn to be playing down Alex Karaban, it's just kind of hard to know exactly what to make of this game. Credit where credit is due. UConn, they needed a win here. They lost 3 in a row in Maui. There was some strife, some turmoil, some frustration. They're back at home. They needed to send a message that they are still a powerhouse program, and they got it done. Baylor had an 11-point lead in the first half. UConn erased that, and then the whole second half, the entire second half basically was 5 to 7 point swings in either direction. It was incredibly good, entertaining, fun basketball. Freshman Liam McNeely for Baylor for UConn, was fantastic. 17 points, 8 rebounds. He had a trio of blocks as well. 6 of 8 UConn players scored 9 or more points. This was a balanced effort. Aiden Mahaney had a nice game offensively for them. He had a couple of threes consecutively in the first half. Danny Hurley lost his mind celebrating after Mahaney did that. UConn also just had 7 turnovers. For as much credit as Baylor's defense was getting in this game, and deservedly so, they forced UConn into a lot of tough shots. To not be able to force any turnovers was really frustrating for the Bears and allowed UConn to do what they needed to do to win. It didn't help that Baylor shot 63% from the free throw line. The only bench points for the Bears came from Rob Wright, star freshman guard. He had 22 off the bench. Jalen Celestine also came off the bench. He fouled out early in this one with 0 of 3 from the field. And Scott Drew was only able to play 7 guys because they didn't have VJ Edgecombe. They didn't have Roach for most of the game. So there was just some fatigue issues that set in. But again, a big shout out to UConn for picking up a much needed quality win here over a good Baylor team. Marquette takes a loss. Their first loss of the year. Iowa State, a really nice win for the Cyclones, 81-70 over Shaka Smart's team. Few teams are able to do this to Marquette. Marquette shot under 39% from the field, 38.6%. You do not see a lot of teams get Marquette to shoot that poorly in a game. They did shoot 35% from 3, 11 of 31, but they still missed 23 pointers in this game. They were also only 5 of 10 from the free throw line. Cam Jones almost had a triple-double, but really didn't have that great of a game. 14 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, but he was 6 of 21 from the field. David Joplin had 8.6 boards, but he was 3 of 13 from the field. Meanwhile, for Iowa State, they have such a blend of players that can beat you, whether it's Keyshawn Gilbert or Tamin Lipsey or Curtis Jones or Joshua Jefferson or Milan Momcilovic. In this game, it was Keyshawn Gilbert really stepped up, 24 points for him. He had 7 assists. He was 7 of 15 from the field. Also a monster game from St. Mary's transfer Joshua Jefferson, 15 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists. He was 7 of 10 from the field. We lauded this pickup for TJ Otzelberger all offseason. He's a perfect fit coming from what he did at St. Mary's. He had that knee injury, which I think prevented a lot of people from getting to see how impactful he really could be. But he's tailor-made for TJ Otzelberger's system, and you're seeing him really start to come into his own early in the season. This is a really great win for Iowa State. Again, not a devastating loss for a Marquette team that played competitively in this game, but obviously some things that they're going to still want to clean up here, particularly from the rebounding perspective and kind of needing to know where to go when Cam Jones is having an off night. Royce Parham had a nice game off the bench for Marquette. I'm sure they'll find their ways to win these kinds of games, but a big shout out to Iowa State for picking this one up. And then the big one, Creighton knocks off the number 1 ranked Jayhawks of Kansas in Omaha. Pandemonium. There was a court storming for Creighton, who'd been ranked in 16 consecutive AP polls, but was not ranked for this game after struggling in the Players Era Festival. It is the first time Kansas has lost to an unranked non-conference opponent in 3 years. But again, it feels not disingenuous, but Creighton will be ranked next week, most likely after winning this game. And there's a pretty good chance they're ranked the rest of the year. And so this will just be kind of a one-off weird blip where they were unranked 1 week and happened to beat a Kansas team in that particular week. Ryan Kalkbrenner returned, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 5 of 11 shooting for him. He was 7 of 8 from the free throw line. But the star player in this game, the reason that Kansas went down was a former Big 12 player, Pop Isaacs, who transferred to Creighton from Texas Tech. 27 points for him, 6 made three-pointers. Just a tremendous shooting game for Isaacs, desperately needed for Creighton. Stephen Ashworth had a nice game as well. He had 6 turnovers, but he also had 6 assists, 8 rebounds, and 17 points. Kansas really struggled in this one. Hunter Dickinson was neutralized by Ryan Kalkbrenner. They struggled to even get him the basketball. He only took 4 field goal attempts. He only made 2 of them. He had 6 points and 8 boards in 25 minutes. Just was not the impactful player that Kansas needed him to be. The guards are inconsistent shooting the rock. Creighton did a lot of what they tried to do was funnel the basketball to guys who they didn't feel could beat them offensively. DeJuan Harris took a lot of three-pointers in this game because that was what things dictated. The way that Creighton was defending it left him open. He shot threes. He didn't make as many of them as he needed to because he's not a great three-point shooter. So it was a good strategy by Greg McDermott and the Blue Jays. They got what they wanted to get out of this game, picked up a big-time victory, kind of getting back on track after struggling, similar to UConn, getting back on track after struggling during their Feast Week event. Last but not least, Texas Tech. I say but not least. I would say it's least out of these games, with no disrespect to Texas Tech. But Texas Tech hands DePaul their first loss. 76-62 was the final there. A needed win for Texas Tech after struggling a little bit last week. DePaul coming into the game undefeated. We knew it wasn't going to last, but still, what a run for Chris Holtmann in his first year as the coach of the Blue Demons. Chance McMillian had 22 on 8 of 14 shooting for the Red Raiders. Darion Williams had 20 for them as well. The Red Raiders shot just 5 of 17 from 3, but they only had 6 turnovers. DePaul did not do enough defensively to get turnovers to be able to get out and get some points in transition. Meanwhile, the Texas Tech did do that. They had 11 steals in this game, part of 14 turnovers for DePaul. Were able to get some points in transition. Grant McCaslin's defense looked great, as it so often does. None of the starters for DePaul were in double figures. They did get 2 double-digit performances off the bench. Jacob Meyer had 14 on 5 of 8 shooting. JJ Traynor had 11 on 5 of 6 coming off the bench. We'll see if DePaul can continue to be, a much better version of the Blue Demons than we've seen in the past, but not really a surprise they took a loss here. We're going to move on away from the other Power 4 conferences to talk about the other Power Conference, the Big Ten, which started conference play and got it going with a big-time win by Maryland. The Terps obliterated Ohio State in the Big Ten opener. We're going to talk about that and preview a couple of games coming your way on Thursday. All that coming up here in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Taking a look at 3 more games that took place on Wednesday, all between Big Ten opponents as the conference season got underway very early this year in the Big Ten. We're going to talk about those 3 games, as well as give you a quick preview of 3 more games coming your way tonight. We start with Maryland and Ohio State. This was not even close. The score of this game at halftime, folks, the Terps were up 50-17 over the Buckeyes. Ultimately, they win 83-59. Wow, really rough stuff from Ohio State. We've been champions of Jake Diebler taking over this Buckeyes team and the fun transfer portal additions they made this offseason, some of the upside guys that they brought in. They've looked good in the early going, snuck into the top 25, got some votes there, but things did not look good for them at all in their first conference game. Meanwhile, Maryland looked really good. They had 6 guys with 9 or more points. Derek Queen continued to be a fantastic rebounder and scorer. 17 points, 11 boards for him. He also had a pair of steals and shot 6 of 10 from the field. Jacoby Gillespie was another major player for Maryland. 23 points, 7 of 11 from the field. He made 4 of 8 three-pointers. Meanwhile, for the Buckeyes, 37% from the field, 22 of 58. They were 4 of 19 from 3, 21% there. Devin Royal was far and away the best player for Ohio State. He had 18 points on 8 of 14 shooting, as well as 9 rebounds. The rest of the team that were non-Devin Royal players, 41 points, 14 of 44. That is 31.8%, and were 9 of 16 from the free throw line. Literally nobody showed up for this game for Ohio State except for Devin Royal. Sean Stewart, the transfer from Duke, kind of expected to be a breakout sophomore candidate. He had 4 points in 18 minutes, same number of fouls for him as well. Aaron Bradshaw is not currently playing as we wait to find out what the situation is with him, although it does not sound good, and it sounds like it could be something that keeps him out for a while. So no Bradshaw for Ohio State. Sean Stewart not playing like the guy they need him to be. We'll see if Jake Diebler's got some magic up his sleeve to turn things around, but this was an ugly start to the conference season for the Buckeyes. Michigan State gets a win on the road at Minnesota, 90-72 for Tom Izzo and the Spartans. They're 7-2 on the year, 31st at KenPom. I think they'll start picking up some more love as a top 25 team. They shot 11 of 22 from three. They out-rebounded the Golden Gophers by 12, 39-27. They also had a ridiculous 25-9 assist-to-turnover ratio as a team. Tom Izzo's team was distributing the basketball. The ball movement was fantastic. They took care of things. It was a really clean and sharp performance from Tom Izzo and the Spartans. Also very balanced scoring. 6 players on the team between 9 points and 12 points. Cohen Carr had 12 points and 3 boards in 16 minutes off the bench. Jackson Kohler had 11 and 11 in 26 minutes as a starter. Balanced, efficient, quality night from the Spartans as they pick up a comfortable 18-point win to start conference play 1-0 over Minnesota. And then last in the Big Ten, of course, the epic Big Ten rivalry, Oregon and USC. The Ducks go pick up a win on the road against the Trojans, 68-60. Oregon was down 7 at half in this game, but outscored USC by 15, 45-30 in the second half to pick up the victory. Career high, Jackson Shellstad had 24 points. He wasn't very efficient in this one. He was 12 of 14 from the free throw line, but 5 of 13 from the field and just 2 of 8 from 3, but still career high for him. Keyshawn Barthelemy came off the bench, had 18 and 5 assists, was 4 of 5 from 3. And USC continues to be really, really challenged in terms of shooting the basketball. They didn't make a single three-pointer against St. Mary's last week. Tonight, or on Wednesday night, they shot 2 of 13 from 3, 15%. They were 34.5% from the field. This team is incredibly inefficient at shooting the basketball from beyond the arc and inside the arc. Just so, unless they find a way to get significantly more offensively efficient, this team's going to really struggle this year. Desmond Claude had 22 points for USC on 9 of 20 shooting. He also had 6 turnovers. Chibuzo Agbo had 18 points, 10 of them coming from the free throw line for the Trojans, but he was 3 of 11 and 2 of 8 from 3. St. Thomas on many draft boards to begin the season, kind of a trendy, like senior veteran, late second round draft pick transfer up from a junior college level. He was at Northern Colorado last year. Kind of, is he the next Dalton Connect type? Didn't even score. 29 minutes for USC in this one. He didn't score at all. He was 0 of 6 from the field. Didn't even get to the free throw line. Just a complete non-factor offensively for Eric Musselman's team. They got a lot of work to do to get anywhere close to being a top 10 team in this conference. And frankly, have a lot of work to do to avoid being the very worst team in the Big Ten this season. Couple games to preview for you quickly on Thursday. Not a great slate, unsurprisingly, after an epic back-to-back days on Tuesday and Wednesday. We do got 3 games we want to talk about, though. Another one in that Big Ten conference play beginning. I teased it in the FanDuel read there. Purdue going on the road to take on Penn State. This game is at 6:30 Eastern time on Fox Sports 1. FanDuel currently favors the Nittany Lions by 1.5. Look, I know Purdue's not Purdue. I know they don't have Zach Edey, but this team has been very, very good this year. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer have looked fantastic. Trey Kaufman-Renn is a perfectly capable replacement in the front court. And look, maybe I'm underestimating Penn State. Maybe they have some juice. They've played decently this year. We saw them play well in their MTE, the Sunshine Slam event. But I'm trusting that Matt Painter and Purdue come out of this one with a W on the road to begin conference play. We also got another matchup in the Big 12 Big East battle. Xavier going on the road to take on Jamie Dixon and the Horned Frogs of TCU. That game is on 8 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN+. FanDuel favors the home team, the Horned Frogs, by 1.5. The Big East currently up 4-2 in that series right now, so TCU has a chance to get that thing closer to even with the win, while Xavier has a chance to pick up a quality road win, kind of make sure to pick up their resume after a bit of some struggles earlier this year, and again, help the Big East move to 5-2 against the Big 12 in this challenge. And then last, a very fun mid-major battle between the A10 and the WCC. St. Louis going on the road to take on Chris Gerlofson and the Dons of San Francisco, 10 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN+. FanDuel favors San Francisco by 9.5. Pretty big line for the Dons. Obviously, St. Louis, without Robbie Avila, is just not the same caliber program that they were hoping to be this year, coming off of a rough season last year. They hired Josh Schertz. He brings in Robbie Avila and other players from St. Louis, Isaiah Swope, or from Indiana State to St. Louis. They have a quality transfer portal class. This is a good team, and I think even without Avila, they could give create some problems for San Francisco, but the Dons are so veteran heavy with Marcus Williams and Malik Thomas in that backcourt. I think ultimately that's enough for them to get a W, but that's a fun, I've advocated before for an A10 WCC scheduling series. I think that would be really, really fun. And this is the kind of game that people are going to really want to watch. And I think it's going to create a lot of excitement for that kind of potential scheduling series in the future if these two conferences were to decide to do it. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Folks, thank you so much to those of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Isaac and I will be back with you on Friday, getting you ready for an epic weekend of games. We got Gonzaga and Kentucky is a huge one on Saturday. We got plenty of other fantastic matchups to talk about to get you ready for this weekend as well. Thanks again, folks. And until next time, as always, peace out.